All right, I just want to briefly talk about how I was able to get wheels to work with my new version of the tank. So first off, let me just remove the crusher and collision box here so you can get a better view. But basically, yeah, I was able to make it to where the tank has dynamic wheel physics. How exactly was I able to do this, you may ask? Well, first of all, something that is important is you basically just need a sphere. Or, sorry, not a sphere, a cylinder. So you can go into here and go into this, click cylinder, and you can just create one right off the bat like this. Okay? But what's important is in order for this to rotate properly, you need to center the pivot point. So when you're in here, what you need to do is you need to go to the hierarchy tab, and then you need to go to affect pivot only, and then this shows you the pivot point, and you want to center it to the object. So that's the first important step. But second is that the pivot point needs to be aligned correctly. And whenever the wheels rotate in the game, what needs to happen is this red arrow needs to be facing forward and the green arrow needs to be facing to the left. So as you can see here, these are the different wheels. This is the orientation that the pivot point needs to be in for that wheel to work. So one way I can think to do it is we can click Affect Object Only, and then we can just rotate our object like this. Figure out what that is. That's the x-axis, so we'll just do -90. And that way, the red arrow is facing forward and the green arrow is facing to the left. Now we can unclick this, and then we can just move this normally. So we can just change this to -90 like that. And then what you can tell is if I go back to the hierarchy and I look at the pivot, this is facing the correct direction. Now, from what I know, how fast the wheels will spin seems to depend on the scale of this cylinder. And when you make these, you basically, I'm pressing F3 right now. You can also press F4 to do this. But using this, what you want to do is take your cylinder and line it up with one of your wheels, and you're going to scale it so that it's the same. So you have the scale button up there, and then you can just drag this in. You could make some of the other objects disappear if you wanted to do that. But you scale that and make it about the same size as the wheel itself. And then what's important after doing this, which, I'm just doing this for demonstration's sake. Like all of these are already here. I'm just explaining how I was able to add the wheels in the first place. But once you have this the way it is, where it's, close to the same scale as the wheels, you need to align it, and you can eyeball it and you can do whatever to get it in the right spot. But the way that I personally did this was I grabbed the wheel object itself. Okay, so this is just wheel LOD3, that's fine, whatever. And I went in here and I went to editable mesh, and what I did was I actually copied this. I grabbed this and then I left click, I cloned it, all right, and pretending that everything is in the same spot. What I did was I went into the editable mesh section right here, and I did the vertex select mode, and then I just grab the vertices for a wheel, and then I just detach it, and then name it wheel 1, wheel 2, wheel 3, wheel 4, etc. until all of these were split up. And, everything is still hypothetically in the same place. What I did was I used the quick align tool up here. So all I had to do was just click on, all I had to do was click on my mesh here and then align it. So I just click this and then click that. Oh, wait, I forgot. But for each and every single one of these, you also have to go to the hierarchy and you have to center the pivot point of the object. But once you do that, you can grab this, quick align, grab that, boom. Your wheel is in the center of the cylinder. Well, your cylinder is in the center of the wheel. And I did that for all of those. So that way, each one of those had to do it. Now, there's a naming convention for each one of these cylinders. The cylinders don't have to have textures. They don't have to be attached to any bones. They don't need any of that. But what they do need is they need to be named the proper thing. You can't just call them object one or cylinder or whatever else. What you need to do is you need to use this naming convention where you have B wheel, and then you could follow that up with just regular wheel, or you could follow that up with just NT, and then R, and then the name of the wheel. And it's not just R. R is for right, and then L is for left. So NT stands for non-turning. You can also use NR for not rotating. And not turning basically makes it to where the wheel doesn't turn to the left and right like a car does. So if you had like the front wheels on a car, you'd actually rename this object to, you would rename the object to just wheel and then R07. So it's B wheel R07. And that's the naming convention for the individual wheels. So as you can tell, for all of these, I basically just have your left and right wheels. So from 0 to 7 and then 0 to 7. And they're all oriented the correct way. And the last thing that you have to do is once you have all of that, I didn't keep all the separated wheels. I didn't keep all of these. I deleted them, and then I just kept the original wheel mesh because I can do that. You could keep the original wheels, it just makes it more difficult for making LODs. But let's say you click on the wheels, like wheel LOD3. What you need to do is you need to click the add button, and you basically add all of the wheels to that mesh. And then you basically go through the process of clicking edit envelopes and making sure that each and every one of these is linked to the correct one. Now, it might automatically pair all of the wheels to the correct cylinders and whatever else, and that's great. It does that based on proximity. But it is important to double check and make sure that it does do this, because if it doesn't, you either need to use the weight paint mode, making sure that blend mode is off and that the bone effect limit is set to 1, because that's very important to make sure that only one vertice can be connected to one bone at a time. That's how the game engine runs. But the other thing is, like, you can use weight paint mode, or you can pull up the table, and when you use the table and you're trying to make it so that all of these are connected to this bone or whatever, what you do is you go to the selected vertices, and then you go up here and select all, and then you'd adjust this number, and you change that number to whatever it needs to be to make that. But point is, you're mapping the bones. You know, you have a skin modifier on the wheels, and you're adding all of those individual cylinders to the individual wheels, and that makes it to where cylinder rotates, wheel rotates, whatever else. One more important thing that you need to do with this cylinder is you need to go here to the tools and utilities, and you need to go to Alamo utility, and when you select your wheel here, you need to make sure that it's set to hidden. Because if you don't do this and you don't set your wheel to hidden, it's going to show up in the game as a physical object. Now, one more thing, because that pretty much has everything set. Again, you can link these to a bone, or you could not do that. But after you're done with the wheels, all right, and you have everything set up and you export it, there's one more thing that you need to do to your model in order for the wheels to work. Well, not to the model, but to the unit itself. And that is, you have to go to the XML file of that unit. So in this case, it's military vehicle tank, I think. Yeah, military vehicle Abrams M2 tank. And what you have to do is a couple things. First off, you need to add the behavior type wheel. So you have to add this behavior type in order for wheels to work on the vehicle. But then the second thing that you have to do is you need to add this, okay? And this is wheel behavior type. Now, for if you're using like a car or something, you could change this number to a 1 or a 2. This basically controls the suspension. It controls the bobbing up and down of the wheel based on the terrain and how far it's allowed to travel. And normally that's like set to a 2 for a lot of vehicles. Some of them, the Masari vehicles, actually have that set to a 4. But for the tank, we have this set to a 0 because the treads themselves are not going to flex based on the terrain that it's on. So it'd be kind of pointless to do that to the wheels as well. But yeah, that's pretty much the gist of how it works. That is how you can apply wheels to an object that may not have previously had them. So if you wanted to take a civilian car and you wanted to make the wheels rotate when it moves, that's pretty much how you do it.